In the headlines tonight, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and President of the EU Council, Charles Michel, discussed various issues ahead of the EU-AU joint summit. China is said to be the leading investor in Africa than other top 8 lenders combined. Good evening to you all. A very warm welcome to ETV News. I am Gurum Tariku. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said he met and held successful discussion with Charles Michel, the President of the European Union Council, ahead of the EU-AU joint summit in Brussels. The Premier stated in his Twitter account that the two leaders exchanged views over the EU-Ethiopian relations as well as issues of regional and continental mutual significance. The EU-AU summit to be held in Brussels is expected to discuss various continental and global matters. The terrorist TPLF unleashed a reign of terror during his invasion into Afar and Amhara before being driven out by allied Ethiopian forces. The rogue and undisciplined army of TPLF intentionally killed civilians and gang raped dozens of women and underage girls in 2 towns in the Amhara region last year. Shocking atrocities were committed on civilians by the TPLF during its occupation of China in Kobo, both in North Wollo zone of the Amhara state. Gosho Meliso has more on this.
After keeping silent or even assisting the terrorist group TPLF with its unfounded accusation against the Ethiopian government, Amnesty International finally came up with a quite revealing evidence of TPLF's war crimes. TPLF fighters willfully killed civilians and gang raped dozens of women and girls in 2 towns in the Amhara region last year. The Human Rights Watchdog interviewed 30 raped survivors, some as young as 40, and victims of violence to get a sense of the atrocities that have been carried out during the 15-month war in areas including China and Kobo. The so-called right groups were a big disappointment to Ethiopians and all friends of Ethiopia, in the sense that instead of exposing the true colors of the TPLF, they took sides with the West, thus helping the TPLF with their acquiescence. Back in February 2021, Ethiopia lashed out at the right groups for the limitations in its reports that accused Eritrean and Ethiopian forces of committing massacre in Aksum, Tigray. Ethiopia at the time said it would have been appropriate for the Amnesty International to undertake the necessary fieldwork by visiting the region and talking to the competent Ethiopian authorities to uncover the truth. Ethiopia and Eritrea have a number of occasions accused the Amnesty International of making no efforts to get the facts right and cross-check the veracity of the allegations. Be that as it may, the rights group disclosed that on Wednesday, Amnesty said it spoke to victims in August and September after rebels from the Tigray People's Liberation Front TPLF seized control of the town. About half of the victims of sexual violence said they were gang raped, with doctors telling Amnesty that some survivors had suffered deep wounds and cuts. A schoolgirl 14 told the rights group she and her mother were raped by TPLF fighters, who said the attacks were in revenge for abuses committed against their own families. One of them raped me in the courtyard and the other raped my mother inside the house, she said. My mother is very sick now. She is very depressed and desperate. We don't speak about what happened. It is impossible. The investigation follows the publication of an Amnesty report in November, which documented sexual assaults by TPLF troops in the Amhara town of Nefas Mocha. Residents of Kobo said TPLF fighters shot dead unarmed civilians, apparently in a revenge killing spree after facing resistance to their advance by the Amhara militias. The watchdog said its satellite imagery analysis revealed the existence of the new burial sites referred to by the villagers. TPLF invaders in northern Ethiopia has resulted widespread massacres, displacement, mass rapes, with thousands of people killed and hundreds of thousands on the brink of starvation. Ethiopia said it expected high professional standards from a major global rights group, expressing hopes that this situation will be a teachable moment for Amnesty. Today's report may be an indication that the Amnesty International has started striving for impartiality, fairness and neutrality in its reporting on Ethiopia.
Deputy Secretary General of the House of People's Representatives and Chairperson of the Ethiopian National Consultative Candidate Nomination Commission, Henok Siyum, said this would have a very great role in shaping the country's political arena. Johannes Fantown has more.
42 commissioners were selected to carry out the huge national agenda, where suitability and credibility of the facilitators has been given due attention. However, complaints are coming from various quarters over the choosing process. Talking to ETV News, Deputy Secretary General of the House of People's Representatives and Chairperson of the Ethiopian National Consultative Candidate Nomination Commission, Henok Siyum, expressed about the fairness of the process.
እነኚህ የእጩ ኮሚሽነሮች የተቆሙበት አግባብ አዋጅ ላይ የተቀመጡትን መስፈርቶች መሰረት በማድረግ
Following the approval of the National Dialogue Proclamation, 9 criteria have been set for the selection of potential candidates. The nominating committee has started working on these 9 criteria. After that, we have received 632 candidates in public. Out of the 632 nominated candidates, those who made the criteria are selected. According to the proclamation, the Speaker of the House of People's Representatives is responsible for selecting candidates. The Speaker decided that it was better to have a consultative committee from the coalition of civic associations, the Council of Religious Institutions, the elders, and those who thought they would implement it. The 42 candidates were also selected by this committee. In addition to the 9 requirements set out in the proclamation, the selection process was conducted in a manner that focused on diversity, age, gender, and other requirements. It was also commented by the people from all regions, elders, religious leaders, and others.
የጾታ ስብጥርን ያማከለ በእድሜም እንግዲህ ኢትዮጵያ የሁሉም እድሜ የሁሉም ጾታ ስለሆነች በእድሜም እንደዚሁ ስብጥሩን ያማከለ ነው ይሆናል።
According to the proclamation, the commissioners selected among the nominated commissioners shall be submitted to the House of People's Representatives for approval. Dr. Henok also spoke about the timing of the final nomination of the commissioners and their main functions and responsibilities.
ከ42 ውስጥ በአዋጁ መሰረት ከ14 የማያንሱ እጩዎችን ለምክር ቤት በማቅረብ ያጸድቃል አፈ ጉባኤው ነው የሚለው።
The Speaker will present the commissioners to the House of Representatives tomorrow for approval. Once the commissioners are elected, their main job is to discuss, coordinate, oversee the overall consultation process, select moderators, and carry out related oversight.
በራሳቸው አንድን የፖለቲካ ፍላጎት ወይም ኢንትረስት ሀሳብ ይዘው የሚሞግቱ የሚከራከሩ አካላት አይደሉም።
This is how Henok replied to the complaints regarding the selection process.
ቅሬታ ካቀረቡት አካላት አንዱ የፖለቲካ ፓርቲዎች መማክርት ነው።
One of the parties to the complaint is the Consultative Assembly of Political Parties. Assembly officials attended a public hearing. During the done, like any other participant, they commented about the commissioners. We have made adjustments based on their commands. Examples include diversity and gender. We saw this and corrected it.
ተሳትፎበት ያለፉበት ስለሆነ አስተያየታቸው ቢተሰጠበት ስለሆነ የነሱን አስተያየትም ኮንሲደር አድርገናል።
Martyrs Monument or Yakata 12. The obelisk, monument, was inaugurated on February 1942 in memory of the citizens of Addis Ababa killed in the Italian fascist massacre of February 1937, and it tells the world, and reminds Ethiopians, about the wild acts and genocide of the fascist Italians through Graziani, by two Ethiopians, in February 1937 provoked the Italian to unleash a three-day reign of terror in the course of which thousands of innocent Ethiopian citizens, including aged people, children, and pregnant women were killed in cold blood by bayonets, guns, spades, and many of houses burnt down. The entire horror and terrorist action befallen on the citizens of Addis Ababa is depicted in bas-relief on the 28-meter of the monument made by two Yugoslavia architects. In addition, the massacre was narrated by bronze letters carved on open book-like stones on four directions around the obelisk. Every year, people of Addis Ababa celebrate this day. The monument represents a white obelisk where the scenes of massacre and the funerals of the victims are depicted. This monument is also called the Monument of Martyrs or Sittist Kilo, 6 kilometer, that is, the name of the quarter where the monument is located.
Reports show that China has invested more in Africa than the other top 8 lenders combined. Between 2007 and 2020, China's two main overseas development banks invested $23 billion in infrastructure projects in the continent. That's $8 billion more than what the other top 8 lenders combined, including the World Bank, African Development Bank, and US and European Development Banks, contributed. Shifarao Lakao looks into the matter.
Many countries invest on the continent of Africa. However, as we speak, China has taken the lead when it comes to investment in Africa. Reports are showing that China, in addition to being Africa's biggest trading partner, is building the future of the continent's urban landscapes almost single-handedly. And in spite of the rhetoric from the US president and other leaders from wealthy countries on the urgent need to improve infrastructure on the continent, investment from these countries and international development banks has stagnated at levels far below what is needed. Between 2007 and 2020, China's two main overseas development banks invested $23 billion in infrastructure projects on the continent, according to a February 9 analysis by the Center for Global Development, a U.S. think tank. That's $8 billion more than what the other top 8 lenders combined, including the World Bank, African Development Bank, and US and European Development Banks contributed. During that period, total lending from all parties has leveled off at about $9 billion per year, less than 1/10 of what the continent likely needs to support its growing population and meet urgent health, development, and energy challenges. In some cases, Chinese infrastructure lending has been a risk for African countries, with projects blamed for being sloppily executed, prioritizing the interests of politicians and exporters over local communities, not employing local workers, and piling up unsustainable debt burdens. But on the whole, the CGD report argues that Chinese infrastructure investment has been a net benefit to African economies and sets a bar that the US and other lenders should aspire to. The report also finds that between all public lenders, renewable energy projects have attracted more investment than other sectors, including fossil fuels. That may be a good thing for the global climate, but with more than half of people on the continent still lacking access to electricity, some economists argue that far more investment is needed in grid infrastructure and, in some cases, natural gas-fired power plants. The FOCAC partnership platform between China and Africa is also giving a boost to the cooperation between the two sides.
The atrocities which the Italian fascists committed during the 1930s and the 1920s in Libya are not generally known. And the reason they're not generally known is that none of the war criminals ever went to trial.
ሳር ቤቱ ሲገባ ሳር ቤቱን በሳት እያቀጣጠሉ ከማቀጣጠላቸው ውጪ አልቀጣጠል ደግሞ ሲላቸው ቤንዚንና ናፍጣ እያርከፈከፉ እዛ ውስጥ ያሉት የተደበቁት እሳት ላያቸው ላይ ያለ ለመሸሽ ሲወጡ እነሱን እንደገና በአካፋ የተገደለበት ይሄ አረመኔነት የኢትዮጵያ ወንድሞቻችን አባቶቻችን ያለአግባብ የተገደሉ
So far, the only two we know of who actually threw the grenades was Mogus Askodom and Abra Dabaj.
Where you are watching ETV News. Ethiopians in Ethiopian origins who returned home for the first time after half a century say serious human rights abuses forced them flee the country. The Great Diaspora Homecoming Challenge has made its target, the Ethiopian Diaspora Association says. Suntayo Tamrat has more on this.
This is one of the heroes that have boldly fought against illiteracy in Ethiopia. He is Tesfa Gebreselassie of the Bulga, who published the first handwritten Ethiopian alphabet and numbers in Amharic and Ge'ez languages. The seventh son of Tesfa Gebreselassie, Abebe Tesfa, fled Ethiopia 48 years ago, opposing the political system of the time. He did not return even once in opposition to the political system over the years. After such a long time, Abebe is able to own and run his father's business. He says he is back to Ethiopia because he realized the political changes, particularly after Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed took power. Creating sustainable peace and security in the country is a precondition for the diaspora to make huge investments in the country.
Dr. Abiy Ahmed called us to come to our homeland and serve the country and help her. This is my reason to come here. In fact, we have made several consultations on how to serve our country. Although there are challenges here, I believe they will improve. The diaspora is ready to invest here, but sustainable peace and security is a precondition.
Another diaspora that shares a similar story with Abebe is Ayansa Ita. He saw his country for the first time after living more than half a century abroad.
I stayed in the US for 52 years. After 4 years, I went to the US. There came the Derg regime. The entire situation in Ethiopia changed. Many great people of the time were assassinated. A number of Ethiopians, including youth, were killed. The Weyane regime that came after the Derg was even worse. The country was led by a family of Weyane. I have missed my families here. I have missed my country. I suffered from homesickness. Ethiopia has seen some good after Abiy Ahmed came to power. I've been closely following Abiy's struggle to unite the divided Ethiopians and to free the people who have been deprived of their rights.
The Great Diaspora Homecoming Challenge, initiated by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, has met its target as a large number of Ethiopian diaspora, Ethiopian origins, and friends of Ethiopia have flocked to their country and served in the political and economic fronts, the Ethiopian Diaspora Association says.
የተለያዩ የምዕራባውያን ኤምባሲዎች አዲስ አበባ የሚገኙ በጥቂት ቁጥር የሚገኙ ዜጎቻቸውን አንዳንዶቹ ምናልባት ትውልድ ኢትዮጵያ
A few Western embassies in Addis Ababa were making false calls to their citizens residing in Addis, but few in number, to flee Ethiopia, claiming Addis Ababa is under siege. The media was filled with such news as Ethiopia was to enter full-scale civil war. But this was completely changed as hundreds of thousands of Ethiopians have flocked to their homeland following the premier's call. They showed the world that Ethiopians, despite having political views, always are one when it comes to a national agenda. Our diaspora have also served as ambassadors of Ethiopia, resisting the global diplomatic pressures against the country.
Since they came to Ethiopia, the Ethiopian diaspora have been engaging in a multitude of tasks that help their country politically, economically, and socially.
Each turbine will produce 370 megawatt. When all the 13 turbines are completed, the dam will be able to produce a little less than 6,000 megawatt, enough to satisfy Ethiopia's needs and to export electricity to regions as far away as Southern Africa and Western Europe.
So I think it's time for Ethiopia to rethink once again that we don't need to waste more time, we don't need to waste more energy. So enough is enough. We need to say, this is it. We've done our best.
This is the dam, the GERD. Look at that. Look at that. This is essentially a new body of water created by the dams. Like that was a really almost dry lake in a lot of land just a couple of years ago. Very cool.
Ethiopia and Italy have agreed to work together in the agro-industrial park development and fashion industries. Industry Minister Melaku Allebel received Italian ambassador to Ethiopia, Agostino Palese, at his office and held discussions on various areas of cooperation between the two countries. He said Ethiopia and Italy have a long history of relations and that their relation needs to be transformed into a higher level. He said the government of Ethiopia plans to become a manufacturing industry hub by increasing the productivity, quality, and competitiveness of the sector. He said 4 integrated agro-industrial parks have been built to achieve this plan, of which 3 have been inaugurated and gone operational. Melaku also indicated that the Ethiopian government plans to create an active economy by gradually opening up the market. The Italian ambassador to Ethiopia, for his part, said the two countries have deep economic integration, stressing need to translate this cooperation into a more practical collaboration. He said Ethiopia, with a population of 150 million people, has a golden opportunity to realize structural change in the economic sphere and enhance the manufacturing industry sector. Saying that Italy has a good experience in the agro-industry park development sector, the ambassador reiterated commitment of his country to share technical support and experience with Ethiopia. Ethio AgriSaft, one of the Midro Group companies, expressed role it plays in the flour export sector in Ethiopia. The company said it boosted its revenue from the export sale that resulted in doubling the country's foreign currency earning from the sector. Tigisternesa has more on this.
Ethiopia has long been known for its fine-looking